What is up, YouTube? Kyrios here, and today we're going to talk about the Cherino review. Now, this one's really difficult, and if you've seen my top 5 somewhere above my head, you know who I'm pulling on. But if I had a top 6, 7, Cherino would definitely be on it. Spoiler alert. But if you're missing a couple key students, you may need to pull on Cherino. But let's review the character or the student, and I'll leave it up to you if you're going to pull or not. So once again, subscribe, like, all that goodness. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the video. All right, let's start going over Cherino. Now, she is a Red Winter character. We don't have any other Red Winter students as of this time. That's going to matter here in a second, but let's go over her affinities real quick. She has a neutral affinity to urban area. She has an S grade affinity to outdoors, and then she's not so good indoors, which is... These are some pretty good affinities because most of the raids, or at least yellow raids, are outdoors, urban. There's 2 outdoors, there's 1 in urban, and there's technically 1 indoors. The one that she's actually going to be really good for, chest or cheesed, is both urban and outdoors. So she could be good, she could be bad, right? Now she does have a handgun, which is really good for damage because the handgun keeps the variance in damage pretty close to each other. And she has an interesting gear setup here. She has boots to badge to watch. And I think the reason they did that is that all 3 of those items give you max HP as you upgrade them through the tiers. So she's going to be a little bit tanky. I don't know why they gave her watch and didn't give her, what's it called? The charm. But I get it, right? They wanted to give her more max HP, but if you're trying to make her tanky, charm probably would have went a lot further. Now, crit rate's always nice for damage, right? But usually handgun characters don't do a lot of damage. Going through her attack, pretty normal across the board for a handgun, right? Like I said, it keeps that damage in line. Crit rate's a little bit higher than normal. Crit damage, normal where it needs to be. Evasion is really nice here. So not only is she tanky, she has evasion, which is unlike Akane, who is not so tanky and does not have evasion either as well. HP pretty decent, and everything else is pretty standard across the board. Going over her skills, let's go over the first skill. The first skill is her AoE Elite Guard attack. Now, this is actually really good for cheese especially, but the fact that it starts at a 7 cost is really hard to work in there and use. And honestly, even at a 6 cost, it's very hard to use. Until you can get her EX skill to 5, she's not that great, unfortunately, or it may hurt your team trying to go through all those skill points. Going through her next normal skill applies a focus fire, which lowers critical hits from the highest attacker. Yes and no. This is okay. Maybe it's really good for Binna, even though her EX skill isn't good for Binna. I wouldn't say that cheesed hits very hard from the primary attacker, so not really anything to write home about there. Increases attack damage. We always like increased attack damage because it just increases damage across the board, especially on the handgun, because you attack really fast, so you get a lot of shots in. Now, really her bread and butter is this sub-skill right here. Increases the cost recovery by up to 511. Increases the effect by another 146 per student. So her cost recovery is 511 with just herself, which is really good. Cost recovery is a very slept on skill. The only other person that has it right now is Hifumi, and you could definitely cheese some base defense with that, mainly because of cost recovery. But the fact that it goes up with Red Winter students, now there's not a whole lot of Red Winter students right now, and there's not a whole lot to write home about, so you're really going to be stuck at that base 511 once you get to 10 rank. But it's really hard to work in until she's maxed out. Until she has a maxed out EX, a maxed out sub skill, and a maxed out passive, she's going to be very hard to work into your team. All right, real quick, future Kyrios here. I do want to say that she is a staple for one teaming cheesed, but if you're trying to do extreme mode, you can definitely do 2 teams for cheesed without her. We'll talk about that in the raid guide coming up. Now, going over her unique weapon real quick, she has a pistol, obviously. It increases outdoor affinity to SS. I don't actually really like that because that really makes her more viable for Binna compared to cheesed. So I much rather have that have been an upgrade in affinity to urban area, or maybe up to a neutral affinity to indoors. That would have been a lot better, but increases attack power even further. So let's go on to talk about which raid she's especially good at and where you would probably use her. All right, let's talk about the raid that she's first really good at and kind of a staple in. It's Cheesed. Now, Cheesed is in 2 locations, outdoors and indoors. Now, in the global version, and depending on when you're watching this, we've only experienced the outdoors version, where she does have a positive affinity. Now, the indoors version, she has a negative affinity. But the reason that you bring her is really not for any kind of boss damage. Not that Cheese really needs boss damage. It's just for AoE clear. And even at a negative affinity, she's probably going to be very good, especially if you're trying to one-team it. But once again, Cheese is very commonly 2-teamed and can still get you a pretty good ranking on a 2-team situation. All right, next raid we want to talk about is Binna, which is the other heavy raid. Now, this is going to be a little short and sweet, but I can't think of a single reason or almost any team comp I've ever seen where Cherino would be in Binna, unless you're trying to 3-team it or 4-team it for extreme, and that's just all you have left. She's not going to bring a whole lot to the table, unfortunately. Now, her affinities stay the same, where her outdoor Binna is going to be positive affinity, and then Binna is also in urban, where she's going to have a neutral affinity, which is okay, but once again, not really used there. And then just as a final point for raids, you could technically bring her the chitin. I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, you could bring her to the giant chicken as well, and that might be a use case for her. And I've seen a couple teams where you get the 2-team it or 3-team it, where you can bring her to the chicken. But still, once again, not the most ideal character for that raid either. Okay, I don't know why the Live 2D doesn't have the mustache, but 5 out of 5 for mustache. Okay, so I don't have any footage of her in PvP, but I will say you could technically use her in PvP. Now, that's going to go against the curve of what other people say, I think, but if you've been using Nonami, you can continue to keep using Nonami, but she could be a good fill for there. Now, she's not going to fill the role of Shun or Aru or Iori or a bunch of others, but when we get to the outdoor location, she may be able to plug in there if you absolutely need her. But I would not pull her based on PvP. It just might be something that could work for you. All right, once again, always pull who you guys enjoy or who you want on your team. But these ratings are going to be dependent on you not having Midori, not having Momoi, not having Iori. So let's take a look at those ratings. You get a 4.5 out of general content used in a lot of different locations, a 3.5 out of raid because only really useful in Cheesed and not Binna, 2 out of 5 for PvP, and a 4.5 out of 5 because of the mustache. Oh yeah. All right, that brings us to our final pull score, which is a 3.5 out of 5. Once again, this is depending on having not having Iori, not having Midori and Momoi, and really need to fill that gambit, or if you want to one-team Cheese. All right, guys, hopefully that helped you out. Thank you so much again for hanging out. If you like the content, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I'll see you guys on the next video.